Chosen ones, pay attention. You are 100% right. What you have been sensing is not random, and it is not something your mind is inventing, because what you are picking up on is real. There are subtle patterns in how people interact with you that your awareness has started to notice, even if you cannot fully explain them yet. This is why your thoughts have felt slightly unsettled, and your emotional state has been off without a clear external reason. Listen closely, because what you understand in this moment will directly influence how you move forward. If you stay until the end, clarity will settle into your awareness, and you will begin to see these patterns with precision, without second-guessing what you feel. Type Amen to affirm. I am showing you that what you're picking up on is not confusion. It is your awareness, recognizing patterns that used to pass unnoticed. The reason this feeling has stayed with you is because the dynamic around you has not actually shifted, and I do not want you to dismiss what has already become visible to you. There are subtle ways your space is being influenced, small pressures that try to shape your direction without being obvious. It may not look direct, but you can feel the pattern underneath it. You are not overthinking. You are seeing what is there, even if the people around you cannot fully recognize it yet. Before you continue, take a moment and like this video, because what you are understanding right now is not ordinary, and it can change how you move through every interaction if you actually hold on to it. This is not being said to create fear, but to strengthen your awareness and build confidence in what you are already noticing. You are in a phase where your perception is becoming sharper, and because of that, not everyone who comes into your space will align with that clarity. Some people are naturally drawn toward you, but not all of them engage with clean intention or balanced presence. There are those who are aware of your direction, and instead of respecting it, they try to subtly shape it. Type 111 if you believe. You have started to notice shifts in how this person communicates, in how they behave, and in how they respond when you begin to grow or move forward. There is a quiet resistance that shows up when you take a step ahead, and a subtle tension that appears when you begin to rise into something better. These moments are not sluchai. They are indicators that something deeper is operating beneath what is visible on the surface. You are being allowed to recognize these patterns so you are not caught off guard or drawn into dynamics that slowly drain your energy. Do not dismiss what has become clear to you, because your stability matters more than maintaining appearances or avoiding discomfort. You do not need to react loudly to everything, but you do need to acknowledge what is real and protect what you are building within yourself. Your direction matters, your progress is real, and what you are moving toward is too important to be shaped by subtle, unspoken pressure. You are being guided to step back with awareness, not with fear. You do not owe everyone an explanation, and you do not need to justify the distance you create when something does not feel aligned. When something becomes clear to you, it is because you are already being positioned to move forward more safely. Trust that what you are noticing is showing you what your eyes may not fully articulate yet. The other person may not even be consciously aware of what they are doing, but their behavior still has an impact on you. This is why you need to stay grounded in your own awareness, because your clarity comes from staying connected to what you are consistently observing. The more you trust that signal, the less confusion you will experience, and the easier it becomes to step away from anything that does not align with where you are going. You are not isolated in this, and you are not without support. You are building a stronger sense of awareness, a clearer perception, and a steadier presence that will carry you through this phase. What you are feeling is not here to weaken you. It is refining how you respond It is preparing you to move with confidence and to hold your position without second-guessing what you see. There is a shift happening in your life, and not every connection will move with you into what you are becoming. Some dynamics will naturally fall away, and others will reveal their true nature before they fade. This is part of your development, and it is not something to resist. It is something to recognize and accept with clarity. You are learning to trust yourself because that awareness has already been forming within you. When something feels off, there is a reason, and you do not need to ignore that signal just to keep things comfortable for others. Your stability matters. Your direction matters, and what you are building matters. You are being pushed to stand in that understanding without hesitation. What you are seeing now will prevent deeper confusion later. What you recognize today will protect you from larger consequences tomorrow. Stay aware, stay grounded, and stay connected to what you are noticing, because you are moving into a place where subtle influence will no longer go unchecked. You have been carrying this awareness quietly, trying to make sense of it without creating tension or drawing attention to it. You have been patient, thinking that maybe what you felt would fade or that things would return to how they seemed before. But this is not something to overlook, because what you noticed was never accidental. It was your awareness directing your attention towards something that needed to be understood before it developed into something more difficult. You are beginning to see that the more you try to ignore it, the more it stays present in your mind. This is not a weakness. It is the nature of awareness, bringing something into focus. There is a difference between allowing people space and giving them access to your internal world, and you are learning that difference now. Not everyone around you needs a place in your thoughts, your plans, or your emotional space. There are boundaries that need to be created, even if they are quiet and not visible to others. Type 777 if you trust in Jesus. There is something you need to see clearly now, and it may feel uncomfortable at first, because the patterns you are recognizing right now did not just appear suddenly. They were there before, but you interacted with them differently. There was a time when you would notice something small, something slightly off in how someone spoke, how they reacted, or how they responded to your energy. And instead of staying with that awareness, you would explain it away. You would tell yourself it is nothing. You would adjust your interpretation to keep the interaction smooth. You would give the benefit of the doubt, even when your internal signal was already pointing in another direction. And over time, that becomes a habit, not because you wanted to ignore what you felt, but because maintaining connection felt more important than questioning it. So instead of observing patterns, you adapted to them. You softened your reactions. You delayed your boundaries. You stayed present in situations that required distance. And in doing that, you unknowingly gave space for subtle influence to continue without resistance. This is how these patterns were able to exist around you without being addressed. Not because you were unaware, but because you were overriding your awareness in real time. And that is the part that is changing now. You are no longer adjusting yourself to maintain comfort. You are starting to notice before you accommodate. You are pausing before you respond. And that pause is disrupting patterns that used to go unnoticed. That is why things feel different. Not because something new has appeared, but because you are no longer participating in the same way you used to. There is something important you need to understand about boundaries, because most people misunderstand this completely. They think setting a boundary means explaining everything, saying more, clarifying your position, making sure the other person understands why you are pulling back. But that is not what real boundaries look like at this stage. What is changing in you is not your ability to explain. It is your willingness to stop over-explaining. You are no longer trying to manage how others interpret your distance. You are simply adjusting your behavior based on what you have already seen. And that adjustment is quiet, but very precise. You respond a little slower, not to create effect, but because you are no longer reacting instantly. You stop filling silence just to keep things comfortable. You let conversations end without trying to extend them artificially. You stop offering access to your thoughts, your plans, and your emotional space by default. Not as punishment, not as a test, but as a natural correction to what you now recognize. And this is where most people feel uncomfortable, because nothing dramatic is happening externally, but internally, everything is different. You are no longer available in the same way, and that change cannot be faked. It comes from clarity, not from strategy. You are not trying to control the situation. You are removing unnecessary involvement from it. And because of that, something very specific begins to happen. The same patterns that once continued without resistance start to lose momentum. Not because you confronted them, but because you stopped feeding them with attention, explanation, and emotional energy. And this is where the real shift begins. Because now, people are no longer interacting with the version of you that used to adapt to maintain comfort. They are interacting with someone who observes first, responds second, and does not rush to maintain connection at any cost. And that changes the entire dynamic. Some people will naturally step back, not because you push them away, but because the pattern no longer works the way it used to. Others will adjust, because they can feel that something about your presence is no longer easy to influence. And this is where you need to stay steady. Because the moment you start questioning your own adjustment, you risk slipping back into the same pattern. You do not need to explain your shift. You do not need to announce your boundaries. You only need to maintain them through your actions. Quietly, consistently, without needing validation for it. There is a direct consequence to everything that is changing in you right now. And most people don't recognize it until it is already happening. Because when you stop participating in subtle patterns that used to pull you in, your presence changes in a way that is not immediately obvious, but very real in how it is experienced by others. You are no longer easy to read through reaction. You are no longer predictable through emotional urgency. And because of that, people cannot interact with you the same way they used to. There is no longer excess interpretation coming from you. No unnecessary emotional extension. No silent pressure to move things forward before they are naturally ready. And when those elements disappear, something very specific replaces them. Clarity. Not forced clarity, not demanded clarity, but clarity that forms naturally because nothing is being distorted in the interaction anymore. And this is where the shift in connection begins. Because the people who rely on subtle influence, mixed signals, or emotional imbalance will find it harder to engage with you. Not because you rejected them, but because the dynamic they were operating in no longer exists. At the same time, something else becomes possible that was not possible before. Someone who interacts with you from a place of consistency, clarity, and grounded intention can now experience you without interference. They are not responding to your reactions. They are responding to your presence. And that difference matters more than most people understand. Because when connection is built on presence instead of projection, it does not need to be forced into meaning. It develops through recognition, not intensity, not urgency, not confusion, but recognition. And this is the part people often describe in a way that sounds dramatic. Even though the mechanism is simple, it feels sudden. Not because it appeared out of nowhere, but because there was no distortion slowing down how clearly it could be seen. There is no overanalysis, no emotional acceleration, no need to constantly interpret what something means. There is simply a clear interaction that builds at a natural pace. And when you experience that after a pattern of confusion, it stands out immediately, not as chaos, but as ease. And that ease is what most people misinterpret. They think it means something is less intense, but in reality, it means something is more stable. Because real alignment does not require constant effort to maintain itself. It holds its own structure. And this is why what is changing in you matters so much. Because you are no longer trying to create connection through interpretation, effort, or emotional momentum. You are allowing connection to reveal itself based on what is actually there. And that is what makes the difference. Not something being sent to you, not something being forced into your life, but something becoming visible because you are finally seeing without distortion. Now understand this clearly, because this is where everything you've just realized starts to settle into something solid. Nothing you are stepping into requires you to chase, force, or prove anything. What is meant to align with you will not need to be held together by overthinking, constant effort, or emotional urgency. It will meet you at the level of clarity you are now choosing to operate from. And that is why this moment matters more than it seems. Because you are no longer the version of yourself that ignored signals, adjusted to discomfort, or stayed in patterns just to keep things from falling apart. You are seeing earlier, responding slower, choosing more carefully, and that alone is enough to change what enters and what stays. There may still be moments where you question yourself, moments where the old habit of explaining, overinvesting, or second-guessing tries to come back. But now you will notice it, and noticing it means you are no longer controlled by it. You are deciding, quietly, consistently, without needing approval. And that is what creates real stability. Not perfection, not control, but awareness that does not disappear under pressure. So as you move forward from here, do not go back to searching for clarity in other people. Do not return to trying to decode what is unclear. Stay with what you can directly observe. Stay with what remains consistent. Stay with what does not require you to abandon your own awareness to maintain it. Because that is where alignment actually exists. Not in intensity, not in confusion, but in something that holds its shape without effort. And when that kind of connection appears, you will not need to question it. You will recognize it, not suddenly, but clearly. If this shifted how you see your own patterns, take a moment and like this video so it reaches someone else who is still stuck in the same loop. And if you are ready to move forward without going back to the patterns that used to drain you, type 222 in the comments as a commitment to your own clarity. Stay aware, stay grounded, and do not step out of what you now see clearly.